The times they are changing. Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was one of the most important figures in contemporary music and one of the most perversely fascinating as well. Born in Minnesota, he was raised on rock and roll but discovered folk music as a student at the University of Minnesota. By 1959, he was playing coffee houses, taking Woody Guthrie as a model and taking his name from Dylan Thomas. At first, he was simply a folk singer. His 1962 debut album had only two original songs. But a quantum leap occurred between this and the next year's follow-up, the freewheeling Bob Dylan. Dylan was writing that dealt with social, political unrest in terms that were both hard-hitting and poetic. The same album introduced Don't Think Twice, It's Alright, one of his most enduring failed love songs. Over the next 4 years, virtually every move Dylan made was a cultural event. Pegged with the protest song singer tag, he quickly grew beyond it and wrote more impressionistic songs on 1964's The Other Side of Bob Dylan. By the next year, Dylan was playing rock music with an electric band. That year brought the rock-tinged album Highway 61 Revisited with its landmark single Like a Rolling Stone. This now iconic moment at the Manchester Free Trade Hall spurred a furious Dylan to deliver his arguably greatest live performance, backed by the group that became known as The Band. The classic era abruptly ended in July 1966 with a serious motorcycle crash whose full story remains mysterious. Dylan spent a full 3 years out of the spotlight, recording a wealth of unreleased material, known as the basement tapes, with the band. When he did emerge, it was with a string of albums. He remained secluded in the early 70s, scoring and acting, which ironically produced Knocking on Heaven's Door, a contender as Dylan's single best loved song. The rest of the decade, in fact, the rest of his career, was characterized by drastic ups and downs. He made a creative comeback with 1975's Blood on the Tracks, a personal outpouring inspired by his divorce, and the following year took a busload of musical friends around the country. He documented this in a movie, Ronaldo and Clara, that probably told fans more about his love life than they wanted to know. Still more surprising was Dylan's declaring himself a born-again Christian in 1979 and embracing fundamentalist themes on slow trade coming. During the 80s, Dylan suddenly became a ubiquitous live performer, touring collaboratively with Tom Petty and later the Grateful Dead, and in 1988 began the series of loose-knit, small combo one-nighters known as the Never-Ending Tour. There were more creative triumphs and more baffling moves. In 2015, he became enraptured with the Frank Sinatra song catalog and devoted 3 consecutive albums to it, including his only triple album, Triplicate. In 2017, Dylan became the first songwriter ever awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. Characteristically, he skipped the ceremony. Meanwhile, new generations discovered key moments in Dylan's career through the archival releases. This Dylan song has the magnitude and power of an anthem. This song was recorded on October 23rd and 24th, 1963. This song was written and recorded in the wake of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, which took place on August 28, 1963. There is a lot of paradox in this song. The greatest paradox of the song is that we receive the prophecy, the times they are a-changing, but without any preaching. There is no indication in the song whatsoever what these new times will bring us in comparison with the old order. We are simply told that the times will change and that we have to accommodate to and accept the new order, or else we will drown and perish. But we are not told what this new order comprises, nor are we told what is wrong with the present order or old order and what we are expected to do to establish a new and better order, except to get out of the way. One may ask the question what the sense is of protesting anything when there is nothing one can do to prevent the coming of this new age. Over and over, the song says that change is inevitable and there is nothing one can do to stop it. However, this song is not a protest song. Dylan has said himself that he didn't protest. He showed his support for various things, but it was never his intention to protest anything. The times they are a-changing captures the feel of much of the 1960s. The decade was one of progress, experimentation, and the willingness to sway from the norm to find something new and hopefully better. The line that reads, "Your sons and daughters are beyond your command," reflects the truth that many parents in the 60s faced. Having grown up in earlier decades, many parents in the 60s were unprepared for the new, free lifestyle that many counterculture young people engaged in. The 60s witnessed some of the highest levels of political activism ever seen in American history, and great leaps were made for various social issues like rights and treatment for gays, blacks, and women. So, the most truthful line in the poem is its title, "The Times They Are a-Changing," because the 60s were a truly revolutionary time in the US history. In the first stanza of this song, Dylan is calling people to gather together. He is asking for unity to take place and for others to admit that the waters around you have grown. This is pointing to the flaws of the government, and that if people do not see what is happening with racism and poverty and realize that something needs to change, then nothing will. Then you better start swimming, or you will sink like a stone, represents the call for people to stand up against what is going on in the United States so things don't end up worse. In the second stanza, Dylan is speaking directly to those who assume to write for the media or newspaper. The news has been talking badly about the times they are in and about the crisis of poverty and discrimination. But Dylan makes sure to tell them not to be quick to speak, for times are changing and the good is arising. Dylan addresses the senators and congressmen and those involved in government affairs. He is telling them to hear the call from those who want change and don't block those fighting for freedom. Don't block up the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. If senators and congressmen don't do anything to improve the country, then they will be hurt. There is a battle outside and it's raging could mean that there is about to be a battle for civil rights. Bob Dylan is talking about the good that is arising in the country. Here the poet addresses mothers and fathers and tells them not to criticize what they don't understand. It means that the youth are probably fighting for freedom, and mothers and fathers look down on their kids for rebelling. But Bob Dylan is saying that there is a need to fight for this freedom. And don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one. In the last stanza, Bob Dylan is now speaking of the change that is taking place directly. Those who are standing up for their freedom and for civil rights are now the minority, but soon they will be the ones ruling and making change. As the present now will be past, the order is rapidly fading, shows that there is change taking place. For the times they are a changing is echoed throughout this whole song.